Is Zeev Buium actually the best defenseman in the draft? Tony Ferrari thinks so.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at San Jose Hockey Now. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Probably part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day, even when they don't play for like a week straight for some reason. Again, seriously, guys. But if you want to be an everyday, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And our Bald King Tony Ferrari joins, where we talk about Zeev Buium, the University of Denver defenseman, and Tony thinks this is the guy in the defensive class. He thinks Zeev Buium could be the player that we're all looking back and going, why did he fall? How did he fall? He has a very, very intriguing name that he kind of draws a parallel to. So without further ado, let's get to our good friend, Tony Ferrari. And now we are joined by our good friend, Tony Ferrari, our Bald King. How's it going, buddy?
Not too bad. We had a little debate of where Zeev Buium's height would land, but apparently it's a little bit all over the place. Hopefully this podcast is a little bit more reined in and controlled.
I mean, if it's on the internet, it has to be true. If you don't know anything about Zeev Buium, let's get caught up here. So Zeev Buium, defenseman, playing at the University of Denver, anywhere between 6 foot and 6'2", depending on where you go. 180 pounds, 28 games this season, has 8 goals, 29 assists with 44 shots on goal. And Tony, I ask you, as I ask at the start of every podcast, what makes Zeev Buium such an intriguing prospect?
For me, it's the fact that he's easily the most well-rounded defenseman in this draft class. You have guys like Artyom Levshinov who attack the net like a fourth forward and put up a ton of points. You have guys like Sam Dickinson who are raw toolkits who have some defensive upside. And you have Anton Silyev, who's just this massive, giant 6'7"
very
man.
Tall.
Being very tall. But with Zeev Buium, you have a guy that's anywhere between 6 foot and 6'2", and plays a really smart defensive game. Isn't going to lead the way with physicality, but he can get physical when need be. And then just his understanding of how to play hockey at an advanced level, seeing the ice really well, making excellent plays with the puck. He's just such a smart defensive player, both with and without the puck. So I think the thing with him is you look at everyone in this draft class, right, basically down from the top end, both at forward and defense, and it's a lot of this guy's really good, but there's this. With Zeev Buium, you don't really have a but there's this, aside from the fact that maybe you want your defenseman to be a bit taller or more physical. But for the most part, this guy plays the game like the prototypical modern day defender with a flair of offensive upside as well, setting record-setting pace right now in the NCAA as a defenseman scoring.
So, I mean, why then, I know Bob's word isn't the Bible, but, it's like, why is he so much lower than the other guys? Bob has him at 13, I think, right now, among all the, just you see guys like Levshinov and some of these other guys who are ranked higher, but seem to have more, I don't want to say fatal flaws, but they just seem to have more issues with this game. Is it maybe his upside? If he doesn't hit that upside, it's not quite as high as some of these other guys, but you're getting a much safer floor.
I think it's a little bit of that. And I think something I was talking to somebody recently about is when you look at the top NHL defensemen in today's game, everyone goes automatically to Cale Makar. Everyone goes to Quinn Hughes. You make your way around the league of Victor Hedman. Adam Fox is right up there, but he doesn't get talked about quite as much, at least not in terms of being the best defenseman in the NHL. And it's because he plays a bit of a quieter game. And I think that's the case with Zeev Buium as well. He plays a quieter game in terms of what my thing that I've loved about him all year is whenever things start to get a little hectic, he's the one that calms things down, corrals the puck, has the patience, the deception to kind of wait out the forechecker, evade traffic, and just allow everyone to breathe on the ice. And that's something that Adam Fox does really well. And I'm not saying Zeev Buium is going to be Adam Fox because, like I said, I think Adam Fox is one of the top defensemen in the NHL. But he plays that style of game, so it's not as flashy, it's not as fun. You don't have him charging the net and scoring some crazy goal. The things that a guy like an Artem Levshunov specifically, who gets compared a lot because they do both play NCAA hockey, is Levshunov is a wild man. He is your cowboy defenseman. He'll go and he'll try to score a goal from 3 feet out and then be the fifth guy back defensively. Zeev Buium plays a much more controlled game. So I think the fact that there isn't as much pop, good or bad, I think that's kind of where you get the hesitance to rank them all that highly. And the fact that despite the University of Denver and Team USA listing him at 6'2", Elite Prospects has him at 6 foot. And even that was questioned a little bit coming into the year. I think he was a guy that was a little bit smaller going into college. If he has grown to 6 foot, I don't really see what the real issue is. And if he's at 6 foot 2, I think this kid's a stud.
So what do you think is, as he kind of continues and becomes a professional, what do you think is going to be his calling card kind of trait going forward?
I think transition in that calming element that I mentioned. I think he's a very good transition defender, both as a passer and a skater. He understands when to do each. I think there are a lot of times defensemen go in and they have that mindset of, oh, I'm going to skate this puck up the ice. They get stripped and they don't know what to do in that moment. Or another style of defenseman is a guy that will just bomb passes up ice all day, and they end up throwing pucks into traffic and get pucks intercepted. Buium kind of understands when and where to make each play. I think that's the thing I really like about him. And then, like I said, that calming presence. He'll go back. There'll be 2 forecheckers, and he comes out perfectly fine with the puck and has the vision up ice already, ready to make the next play. So I think those are the 2 things. And then if he can translate some of this offensive ability, the really nice pinpoint seam passes, the north-south passes, he has something I call pulsating ability at the blue line, where he's going to creep in, but then he retracts, then he creeps in a little bit more, and then he retracts again, just kind of changing the angle on passing lanes and shooting lanes, giving himself and his teammates a little bit more to work with. But he's never really going to be that guy that, like I said, ends up at the net and banking it in on the back door with any consistent basis. So I think he plays a really well all-around game, but transition and that calming ability are the 2 things that really attract me to his game.
And then, of course, what do you think as he continues his development for however long? We'll talk about how long you think he'll be at University of Denver. What do you think is the kind of that focus that he needs to really kind of work on as he continues to grow to make him kind of that top-notch defender?
Becoming 6'2", like he's listed, would be awesome.
He's got to do the Bart thing where he's got like the stripes and he's got the spiky hair and the Chihuahua dog.
Yeah, his next at Central Scouting, they're going to come in. They're going to be like, pat your hair down. He's like, no, this is just my height. This is just it.
This is just my height, guys. Just trust me, it's fine.
Yeah, but no, like this kid's, the reality is it's just get bigger, faster, stronger. I think that's what I love about the NCAA route is you have time to get bigger and faster, especially in the weight room in the gym. You're able to work on those things because you're not playing as many games every week. You're still going to school and you have time away from the rink. And as much as I think we all need to work on the game on the ice, working on the game off the ice, especially for these young kids who aren't physically mature yet, is such a big deal. And I think the NCAA route gives guys like Zeev Buium time to do that. And then if he does get bigger, if he does get faster, he's get a little stronger, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with.
All right, we'll talk more about the CHL versus the NHL here, or NCAA here in a little bit. But all right, before we continue with our good friend Tony, where we discuss kind of Buium's development, when we think he's going to be in the NHL, if he'd be a good partner for Shakir Mukhamadullin, we'll get to all that here in just 1 second. Grocery bills are so expensive these days, but now they don't have to be. Start getting cash back on your grocery shopping with the free Ibotta app and get cash back every time you shop. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies to toys, so you can make sure that you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That can cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. So you can buy that flight that you've been eyeing, that game that you've been dying to go to, that fancy dinner that you've been craving. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just to try out Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONNHL when you register. Just go to the Apple App Store, Google Play Store, and download the free Ibotta app and start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONNHL. That's IBOTTA in Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONNHL. So, I mean, he's at University of Denver, right? What type of timeline are we looking? You see kind of the now it's like usually kind of 2 years, especially for these top end guys. Is he especially because he's in school his first year, right? Kind of it's just D1 or D-1 year, excuse me. Are you expecting him going back to University of Denver next year and then probably turn pro after that?
I think he's probably got 2 more university seasons in him. This year coming up after like his D+1 year would be nice to see him play there again. And then honestly, let him play there 1 more year, especially if it's a team like the Sharks. You're not rushing guys into the NHL for any reason specifically. So if he wants that second year, let him go get bigger, faster, stronger, like I mentioned.
And then, of course, the Sharks do have Shakir Mukhamadullin, who's been kind of very slowly, but looks like he's starting to kind of make his presence. And I think he's been the Sharks have been very slow and with him. It looks like he's starting to pay off for them. Where would kind of compare their 2 games where Mukhamadullin, I know, was a very, very raw, toolsy prospect, but has started to kind of put things together. How would you kind of compare the 2 games?
I think they'd make fun partners because I think Mukhamadullin does have that raw physical mind tool set, and it would allow him to freelance and be a little bit more of a two-way guy. I'm curious as to where Mukhamadulin's game kind of ends up at the NHL level because I've always looked at him and go, what are you? You gigantic giraffe of a man. And he really still hasn't answered that question. He's a little bit offensive, a little bit defensive. He can make some passes in transition, but what are you? And I think Zeev Buium comes in, and if they were to play together, Zeev Buium plays a lot of roles. He can wear a lot of hats. Whatever hat he needs to play on that pairing to allow Mukhamadullin to be his best self, I think that's what ends up happening. And I think Zeev Buium's the driver on that pairing. I think Zeev Buium's the better player on that pairing. And probably the top defense prospect for the Sharks pretty easily. I think you have guys like Eklund, if you want to consider him a prospect or not still, but certainly Will Smith up there. And Zeev Buium's right near the top of that list.
Yeah, I was going to say, Eklund's kind of graduated. He's almost he's at 70 games now. Will Smith, you have Quentin Musty, who I'd probably rank at number 2 right now in the Sharks prospect pool, who I know you love, Quentin Musty. Yes, he is. He looks really good this year. So really fun guy to watch. But anyway, we'll talk about Quentin Musty at some time, you and I. But I think though, you probably, and whoever the Sharks pick at, if they pick Celebrini, etc. I think Buium probably fits right there in that Musty kind of right in that top tier with kind of their rebuild here. And if Buium, who's potentially a early teens type of pick, and the Sharks have that Penguins pick, which is looking better and better every day. The Sharks could be walking away feeling really, really good about kind of where this rebuild is going if everything kind of lines up, right?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, right? You have that Penguins pick, which is going to give you probably 2 picks in the top 15, maybe 2 picks in the top 10.
So it's top 10 protected. So if it's 11 on,
okay,
it's 11 on. It's this year.
So you have the
if it's
first
top 10 this year,
pick.
next year, the next year it becomes unprotected first round pick. But I don't want to tempt the hockey gods, and then the Penguins just go on a roll next year and destroy everybody. I'm trying to cash in my lottery ticket now, I think.
No, I agree with you. I think you try to get that pick this year. Hope for that pick this year, obviously.
Because you never know with the Penguins, like, as long as
Yeah.
Crosby's there, they're going to try to win games, and they could just so you
I
try
mean,
to
who's the
get it
next?
this year.
Yeah, who's the aging superstar on the market this year that they're going to trade for? That'll be the thing for
Ovechkin,
them,
Crosby,
right?
let's go.
Oh, let's go, baby. Trade Jake Gensel and replace him with Alexander Ovechkin. No, but like you said, if they get like the first or second pick, get the Celebrini, get the guy at the top of the draft, and then get a guy like Zeev Buium at 11, 12, 13th overall, I think you walk away and you're pretty happy about that draft class, because even though you probably get the number 1 and number 4 prospect in your pool, that top 4 of your prospect pool is going to be really, really strong. I think, like you said, Will Smith is a fantastic player. He's having a great year in the NCAA out in Boston. Quentin Musty, just so fun to watch in Sudbury this year. He's really, really taking his game to the next level, where I wanted to see it. And I always saw this from his game. And then you add that top guy, you add that top defenseman, maybe. I don't see the Sharks coming out of this draft class without a defenseman. There's too many. There's too many at the end of the day. Especially if they do go and get that top forward at the top. Then you go get that defenseman, and you're walking away pretty happy about this rebuild, and you're in a great spot, I think, after that.
Yeah, I mean, if we kind of talk some quick strategy, especially with like, there's so many defensemen, and none of them are kind of like clear cut guys in this draft. And we've talked about this is my third defensive profile, and a lot of these guys are just like, oh yeah, he could be this or he could do this, and there's that one guy where you're like, oh yeah, that guy's going to be a stud. And Buium, very safe floor. If he gets a little bit bigger, like etc., you could see him be that type of guy. So if you're the Sharks, I think you get whoever the best forward, if it's Celebrini or if it's Lindstrom, if it's whoever you want at that 1, 2, 3, and then just see which defenseman falls to you at whatever that Penguins pick, and then if you want to double back up with your own pick, which is going to be 33, 34, 35. And then you got that Devils pick, which is probably going to be mid-second round. Like, you could seriously be walking away feeling really good about where this prospect pool is heading here pretty soon. So, I think try to grab a defenseman in the that Penguins pick has to be a defenseman, right?
Yeah, I look at it and I go, I don't think there's a number 1 defenseman in this draft class, but there's a lot of guys who could be really interesting number 2s. Maybe next year's the year you get the number 1, or maybe you have a number 1 by committee. Somewhere, like, is Morgan Riley a number 1 defenseman? It's certainly up for debate, but he's played number 1 minutes for years in Toronto, on a successful team on the regular season.
Mario Ferraro, baby, number 1 defenseman.
Yeah. Oh man. Love the last name, not the player so much recently. But that's just it. Like, see, you draft that you draft that defenseman high. Like you said, you double back down at the end of at the start of the second round, and you get a really good player there. Because I think, much like the defenseman, there's a lot of guys that could be that next player in the draft, could be the first overall first pick defenseman. In that second round, you're gonna have a lot of guys, because it's a very mushy from like 18 to 50 range, I think, this year in the draft. And you're going to have a guy that falls to you that you're going to fall in love with at the top of the second round. And you're going to be like, how did player X fall to us? Like, this guy's going to be the next Quentin Musty for our prospect pool. And he very well could be. So it's an interesting group in this year's draft class. That's for sure. Cause I know there's some people that say it's a bad draft, but I think it's a really interesting draft, because it's a lot of, man, if this guy hits, he could be something really special, or he could be something really fun. But there's this one thing he needs to work on.
Yep. And plus, the Sharks already have their number 1 defenseman, Luca Caglioni. So that problem is solved. He's an absolute monster too. If he was like 6'2", we would be talking about how Luca Caglioni is like the second coming here. But all right, guys, before we continue with Tony, we actually talk about an article he wrote about the CHL for the NCAA, and kind of this argument to be made of why CHL players should be allowed to go play in the NCAA, and why a guy like Quentin Musty would be a prime target for this type of development path. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. We're driven by the search for better. When it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is the matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches comparable to other job sites, according to recent Indeed survey. So join more than the 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent. And listeners of the show can get a $75 job sponsored credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed at this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. We kind of touched on it earlier about talking about the kind of the CHL versus NCAA, and you wrote an article recently for the Hockey News, kind of based off David Quinn's comments about the NCAA is better than CHL. And well, first, let's start with the rumors and stuff. And if you're kind of new to it, what's kind of the rumors right now, or the thing behind the scenes, right, where they're trying to allow CHL kids to potentially have eligibility to play in the NCAA, right? Is that kind of what this is all stemming from, right?
Yeah, that's essentially what it stems from. I wrote about that on the Hockey News as well. It's essentially the coaches are set to vote at the end of the season as to whether or not they think the NCAA should allow CHL players to have eligibility into the NCAA without much of a plan as to what the rules and regulations around that would be. But it would be a first step.
The NCAA with a plan. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
I know, right? It's
yes.
Classic hockey.
Or just any NCAA sport. Yeah.
Really, honestly. We all know how smoothly those NIL deals rolled out. So, but I think the NIL deals, since I brought it up, play a factor in that. I think the fact that they have players and athletes, mostly outside of hockey, making money with endorsement deals, name, image, and likeness deals that have allowed them to financially benefit. Now the argument that the CHL is a semi-professional league because guys have signed their NHL entry-level contracts already while playing in that league. They're not playing in the NHL. They're playing in the CHL. It's always been kind of a goofy reasoning for it, but at the end of the day, they're competing leagues. So I understood it to that extent. With that said, I think for at least the NCAA and the CHL, I think it would be mutually beneficial. I think the CHL, assuming the rules would end up being you can't go until you're 20, it limits the number of CHL guys that end up going, but it also allows the CHL to keep their stars in the league until that time. A lot of the best players are going to the NHL or playing in pro hockey anyways. So if they need that extra year, they go to the NCAA. That's where they can kind of, like I said, work on that strength, work on that speed, work on getting bigger, faster, stronger before you take that step. You get that intermediary kind of step that you don't get with the AHL right now. I think that's the big problem for the CHL is it limits when guys can go into the AHL. And I think the NCAA would be a really interesting middle ground for that. With that said, it affects every other league around the world, junior A leagues, the BCHL, the USHL, various different things like that. It affects the NCAA and the fact that the guys at the bottom of the rosters might get kicked out of the team, may lose their spots to some of these CHLers coming in. So there's a lot to consider. The recent rumors and murmurs are that the NCAA coaches are not as in favor as initially reported. So we'll have to see at the end of the season. It's something that probably gets talked about more than we even realize and hasn't made its way into reality yet. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think we probably are definitely kind of maybe making a mountain out of a molehill type of thing, especially with the star players. But you have to. I always feel like guys, like look at a Shane Wright, too good to play in the OHL, right? And he got his exemption to play in the AHL. But we mentioned Quentin Musty, who next year is probably going to be too good to be playing in the OHL. To be like, it's going to be too easy for him. But again, like he cannot play in the AHL because he won't be 20 yet. So is it for something like this? Would it be better for him to go play in the NCAA for a year or two, where he can continue to kind of play against guys who are old, much older, especially at the NCAA, where, you have guys who are 22, 23, 24, 26, I think is you found a guy who's 26. If I
27.
remember,
He just turned
27.
27.
God bless him. Good for him. Who's still playing in the NCAA. And it's like you're getting to kind of continue your development, just that next step in your development path. And yes, I know maybe you're taking scholarships away, or maybe that's the thing. Maybe those guys just aren't eligible for scholarships. These guys have all, if you signed your ELC, whether or not you signed your ELC, but you've signed some sort of contract, and that way you're not taking away a scholarship from another kid type of thing. But I think there needs to be, because it does feel like after the CHL, there's such a drop, like it's such a tough sledding, and you see that like even with Sharks players who, Brandon Coe, who had an amazing final year as an overager and then just struggled to get on the ice his first year in the AHL. And I think trying to find a pathway for those guys to continue their development, right, it makes a lot of sense for everybody involved.
Yeah, that's my thing, is it's a perfect step towards the pro hockey game for these CHL kids. Like you said, a guy like Quentin Musty, he's not going to have a whole lot to prove next year, aside from going back and just beating the crap
Crushing
out of the
records.
OHL.
Yeah.
And at that point, is he going to be fully engaged all year next year? Like that game in early January, mid-February, they're going to be harder to get up for next year when he's like, I'm going to go out there, sleep my way through the game and still end up with 2 points. So why put a full effort in, right? So I think the NCAA would be a great kind of middle ground for that. And David Quinn's comments were pretty funny about it all. It was fun to look into the comparison.
Boston University guy, former Boston University alumni, Boston University coach saying but yeah, sorry.
I know that's just it, right? It's the former university coach kind of going, oh, it's university's definitely better. And like I tried to lay out in that article, is university is better in some aspects and the CHL is better in some aspects. They're different leagues, they're different levels. At the end of the day, you don't have more than a handful of 21-year-olds in the CHL, and those guys are guys that turn 21 during the season. In the NCAA, you have a guy who currently is older than the NHL's leading goal scorer in Austin Matthews playing right now. So it's kind of a goofy little reality. But yeah, like one of my favorite facts that I came up with in that article was there are as many players older than Austin Matthews as there are 17-year-olds in the NCAA. And it's like, okay, like cool, man. Like that's so silly. But that's just kind of the reality of the NCAA. It's a bigger, faster, stronger league. It's more structured. And I think that's a great aspect as well. You learn to play that defensive side of the puck because you're forced to play the defensive side of the game. It's a less offensive, free-flowing league. And I think it'd be an awesome super pipeline if the NCAA and CHL could find a way to work together, because you go to the CHL, you develop all of your high-end skill, your playmaking, your risk-taking ability, all of the fun, flashy things that are required to play at a high pace in the NHL today. And then you go to the NCAA and learn to kind of rein it in, learn what you can and can't do, and become a much more complete player coming out of college. And I think that's been one of the biggest things, is we've seen so many college guys come out and they just seem more structured and refined in the NHL, even if they don't have that high level of skill that some of these CHL guys have.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned just the style of play, right? The CHL is, I've watched a fair amount of CHL games. I watched a lot of college games, and unless you're watching a top team like Boston College, who they have 1,000 first round picks, so they can play a much more free flowing, they're able to kind of get away with that, more fast paced, because they have 1,000 picks and a lot of guys who've played a lot of time together, like the kid line there, or the USA line, whatever you want to call it. But if you're watching Bemidji State, like there's, you're watching like it's very more kind of structured, slower pace, and it's kind of like two teams trying to kind of like get the edge there. And I think for these kids' development, right? And you kind of touched on like how many times, like even like Henry Threaten played 4 years in
Yeah.
college, comes out, he looks like an NHL defenseman now. Like I know the Sharks are not the best environment, but he looks like an NHL defenseman who could play for basically any team in the league. And because he's had that experience playing these against guys a little bit older here. So I think it'll be an interesting debate. I think it would help solve that, like, well, what happens when my guy's too good for the CHL, like the Quentin Musties, your Shane Wrights, your players like that. But we'll see. So we'll get you out here with the blood questions. Of course, I already asked you who you thought was going to be the best player in the draft. Which guy in the top 10 are we going to be looking back going 5 years from now going, how did that guy get up there?
Ooh. It could be Artem Levshinov, or Zane Parekh. I'll give you those two because both play a bit of an unrealistic game in terms of pro projection. Both love to just go play fourth forward. With Levshinov, he has the physical tools to play a good, strong defensive game, but sometimes is just not really involved in that side of the ice. I've seen a number of times where he gets beaten wide, and instead of trying to recover and get back, he points at his defensive partner and goes, "Oh, there's the guy with the puck. Like, go play defense.
Help me out, bro."
And it's funny to see when you're watching, but at the end of the day, there's some defensive issues in terms of his quickness and agility and everything. With Zane Parekh, man, that kid is putting up some points at the OHL level. If you watch his highlight reel, it's one of the most fun highlight reels in this year's draft class. Maybe the most fun.
Mhm.
With that said, I've watched him go into a board battle, and then there's that viral clip of William Nylander in the playoffs a couple years ago, going in on the forecheck, and instead of going for the puck, he literally just stops up before the goal line and lets the opposing team get the puck. That's a Zane Parekh special, baby. Like, he loves to do that in the defensive zone, and you just simply can't do that as a defenseman when you're going back to recover a puck.
Coaches love that. That's
yeah. And I think that's the big issue is he lacks intensity defensively. He lacks kind of a willingness defensively, and he just doesn't play a physical game in any sense of the word. So the points are fun. The offensive scoring is insane. It's going to set a record this year. First one since I think who's Vegas's coach there?
Yeah. I just saw Vegas too. Oh
regardless, he's going to be the first OHL defenseman to score 100 points in goodness knows how long. So
yeah,
the points are going to be outrageous. It's going to be super fun. But man, there's so much more to the game than just scoring points, especially as a defenseman. So I think one of those guys could go pretty high, and a team might kind of go, "What did we get ourselves into with this one?"
All right. I know we're almost at the end of February here, but where does Zeev Buium go in the draft? What pick?
Where does Zeev Buium go in the draft? I'll say 12th overall.
Congratulations, Nashville. That means he'll be good because they just pump out defensemen. So yeah. So Tony, you've said it all. Where can the people find you, buddy?
You can find all my writing work at thehockeynews.com. Follow my Twitter at @TheTonyFerrari for all of that. And all my videos, the Game Tape with Tony videos that I do where I interview prospects, break down some video with them of their own highlights, and kind of dig into that side of things, get to know them on and off the ice. That's all at Elite Prospects this year. I've got Caden Lindstrom and Berkeley Catton already out. Liam Greentree is going to be out today or tomorrow, depending on when this posts. And
spoiler, Greentree profile coming next week, guys.
Oh, it's a good one. He's
Tony. We're like all this, and we keep.
I know, right? He's a fun player. He's definitely watch my game tape video and then come back and listen to the profile on this podcast because Greentree is a very, very interesting player for this year's draft class, and I've got a Luke Misa one coming out next week too. So check that out as well.
When's the Zeev Buium one drop? Because that's now the people want to know the Zeev Buium one.
The Zeev Buium one is pending the University of Denver getting back to me.
I understand that one. So, Tony, you've said it all. We'll chat again soon, buddy.
Sounds good, buddy. Have a good one.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Tony. Zeev Buium. I think he could be the one, guys. I think he could be the one. Again, if the Sharks get Celebrini and then they get Zeev Buium with the Penguins pick, that's a home run. That's a home run. I don't care what else they do. I think this is the guy right here. This is who we want. So we'll continue doing our draft profiles. We have Green Tree next week with our good friend Ben Jordan. So make sure you guys are following along for that. We'll continue. We'll probably have something new tomorrow. Probably prospect brief. Maybe we'll do some trade deadline stuff. See what kind of what I feel like doing. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. You can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. You can follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole. Till next time. Bye, friends.